My purpose in life is to leave my dent in the universe in absolutely everything I do, as well as to inspire and help others do the same. For someone to leave their dent in my life is a privilege. For me to leave my dent in someone else's life is an honor. But to inspire and help others leave their own dent in the universe is an indescribable feeling. I plan on doing this through this podcast by celebrating my guests and inspiring my listeners, all while leaving my own dent in the universe and helping others do the same. My name is Fer Andrade, and this is Denting. Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Denting with Fer. Today I have a very special guest. I'm really excited about this talk, and I told you I was. I'll explain why in a minute. Cat Roxas, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited about this because, like you just said, actually, that you're just going to roll with it. That's literally the goal for me here as well. Usually I have like a whole plan structure of like an interview, but I have more questions that I'm genuinely curious about because for the first time, I have someone that has the same interest as me outside of sports, which is the politics side to things. So that I'm really excited about that. But before we dive into that, would you like to introduce yourself for those that may not know you?
Sure. My name is Cat Roxas. I'm a senior midfielder on the women's lacrosse team. I am double majoring in poli-sci and media studies. And yeah, that's pretty much me. That's
you. So yeah, I explained why I'm excited about this. Tell me how you got to Cal. Obviously, there's the lacrosse aspect of things, and I don't want to completely erase that from the conversation. But how was that? How was your recruitment process to get here?
Well, obviously, lacrosse is, what introduced me to Cal. I'm from the East Coast, so pretty much all of my other options and pretty much all I had considered were on the East Coast, being close to home. And then one day I got an email from the Cal coaches, and my dad was like, you gotta go to Berkeley. You have to just go check it out. And then I came on a few visits, and from the minute I landed in San Francisco, I knew that I wanted to be out here. And it's extra special because this was my dad's dream school.
Okay.
He grew up in the Philippines, and he ended up going to school in Chicago, which is not a bad second option, but he really wanted to go to Cal, and I think the story was that he applied to a bunch of graduate programs, and then when it came time to applying to Berkeley, he couldn't afford it.
Okay.
So it was an extra special thing to share with him that we were both living out kind of the same dream. And that I was able to do it. So, yeah, that's kind of the whole narrative that got me here.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Coming into Cal, did you have any idea of what you wanted to major in?
No, not at all, actually. I think I considered a few other options. I didn't even think about political science or media studies. I think I went in a little bit more narrow-minded than I actually should have, in terms of not letting it come to me. I wanted to pick and choose, and I wanted to kind of follow something that was going to set me up for success, instead of kind of letting my interests and my passion and the things that I'm naturally more drawn to and just better at kind of lead me to these two majors. So I didn't really know.
Yeah. Did your parents or anyone close to you ever pressure you to study a certain thing, or was it all open-minded, you can choose whatever you want?
I think my dad was just mainly happy I was at Berkeley,
okay.
So he didn't really care. I have 3 sisters, and we're all very different. So I think I'm the third one. So by the time it got to me, it was kind of just she's the only one in California. She's off doing her own thing.
Oh, well.
So be it. She can do whatever she wants, which is awesome to have that liberty and not really feel that pressure. I think I pressured myself into wanting to do something more technical, and just not even kind of, I guess, taking into consideration what my interests were, but I also just didn't know what they were.
Okay.
I didn't realize up until later on that politics was interesting to me, or honing in on the fact that I was really good at writing, so why
Yeah.
not follow a major that I can showcase that.
Yeah. How did you find out about these interests? Did you purposely like look for them, or did you just find them eventually? Like, what happened with your journey there?
I think it kind of has to do with the Go Bears Go Vote, like, origin story, which was that my freshman year, a senior at the time, had taken us through essentially the Go Bears Go Vote presentation,
Okay.
where she was set out this goal to get everyone on her team, and her wider goal was to get everyone in the athletic department registered to vote. And she was just a one-woman show, and she had just taken us through. And it kind of made me realize how little I knew about that entire realm, and how I could and should be more civically engaged. I just, like, didn't really have the knowledge to.
Okay.
And I think that kind of led me to realizing that political science as a major was something that encapsulated that kind of knowledge, but also kind of gave me, like, I don't know, it kind of just, like, I was more drawn to it because it had that, like, writing aspect, it had that, like, critical thinking aspect that I was naturally good at academically, but also interested me. Like, there's so many different classes and different directions you can go with it. So I think that moment, my freshman year, kind of opened up my eyes to politics and civic engagement and whatnot.
No, that's very interesting. I'm asking because for me, I didn't really think about poli-sci coming into Cal at all either. I have been like business major minded the whole time. I'm actually like applying right now, so I'm still going on to that. But poli-sci came to play when the pandemic started. It was in January, so my second semester of my freshman year. I started getting really into current events because I heard about this thing called coronavirus, and I was like, it's coming up in the news. I'm going to start reading the news. And my dad actually like consumes a lot of current events, like just on the news. And we used to connect with it because my 8th grade teacher, Mrs. Bonnie Nager, would have us like write current events weekly and just present them in class. But after that, I didn't really read the news, watch the news, anything. And this came around, the pandemic happened, I got really bored, so I started consuming the news a lot, and it was like, I'm gonna one-up my dad and just know more than him. So I would read everything, all these sources. And then I actually was like a bit annoyed with all the misinformation going on, specifically with my friends, with my friend group. And it wasn't like the misinformation that we know today. It was actually like they just weren't aware of what was going on because there was confusion, and they weren't willing to watch or read the news. So I started recording videos. That's how I like got into this thing.
Oh, cool.
I recorded videos like every day, and it was like 1 minute per section, and it was like my own little news thing. And I would just share it on an account with my friends, and that's how I got into poli-sci.
That's awesome. That makes me think of kind of like an unlocked memory, which I guess is kind of another way to answer your question, but I love SNL.
Yes.
And Weekend Update is my favorite part of SNL. And when I was a few years back, like maybe when I was in high school or even the start of college, I just didn't love that I didn't know what the jokes they were making reference to. And so I was just like, okay, I'll be in the know. I'll find out what senator or what politician they're making fun of or what current event they're making light of, so I can, one, understand the joke, and then two, like, I also loved like being able to share it, like explain real world current events with people who wouldn't bother maybe to do it to look it up on their own, but also just like it's fun to talk about when you're knowledgeable.
Exactly.
And share.
Yeah, and that's like one of the things I enjoyed, like the relationship with my dad, like just talking about those things. And SNL is actually huge as well because he would show me some videos and I didn't understand it back in high school. And now that I watch it, because I watch it every Sunday morning pretty much now, and Weekend Update is just the best.
It's my favorite. That would be my dream job, I think, to be a writer for like a satirical news show, because I think it's the satire of it, of like the current events, bring a whole nother perspective to like just the current event as it is. And it's also like, I think one of the more entertaining ways to deliver news that isn't necessarily like as black and white as like regular news shows.
Yeah, because I mean, especially with news today, I mean, it's very polarized nowadays, and I mean, SNL obviously leans one way more than another, but it's still like satire, like you're saying. It's pretty funny. I think everybody can just laugh at it. With the dream job that you're talking about, I don't want to get there yet, but with writing, have you always known about writing? Like, is that something you've always been passionate about, or is it just because you're good at it?
I think it kind of was the passion kind of fueled, I guess I really enjoyed writing as a kid and making stories up or just writing. And I would always, I guess the more I did it, the better I got at it. Yeah. So it was like a self-reinforcing cycle. And my favorite thing to do is to write about something that I'm passionate about, because it's just so much easier and makes it so much more meaningful. So like even when I'm writing essays for class, if I'm not super passionate about the subject, it's really difficult, obviously, because the words don't flow and I'm not as willing to do the research, the extra work. So I think it was kind of that like self-reinforcing cycle that I've always just been drawn to writing.
Yeah. Again, literally in the same shoes, because I've loved writing like ever since I knew I was like pretty good at it. I'm a very talkative person, so writing was like a different form of just communicating, but with myself in a way. And I love essays. We were talking about how you have 3 essays due in like the next 2 days.
Yes.
I've written, I think, this month, so we're recording in November, but it's going to release like finals week, I think, in December. But this month, I'm basically writing 50 pages in essays. And honestly, I've known about this since August, and I've been excited for it. Like, obviously, it sucks when there's research involved and things like that. But the writing aspect is like way better for me than an equation or something like that. And it's just so much fun for me. I also do a blog like on the men's soccer page, and it's like writing freely and something I enjoy. How do you see yourself connecting? Like, obviously writing helps you with poli-sci, and I'm sure it has to do something with media studies as well. How do you see yourself connecting those two majors, and where do you think that'll take you?
That's a really good question. I don't necessarily have like one point where I see them intersecting.
Okay.
Because I have like so many different like ideas of where that could go. Part of me wants to go to law school. So, and that's something I will like hang on to, and I guess I'm speaking into existence, and it's being recorded right now because I don't always share that with people because I'm afraid I'm not going to actually go, and then it's already been out there. But whatever, speaking into existence, it's how things happen anyway. So part of me wants to be a lawyer of some sort. I'm not entirely sure. I see those two intersecting there entirely. Kind of like I said earlier, journalism is something that's super interesting to me too. I love shows that are about like the news world. My favorite show right now, it's called The Morning Show.
Okay.
On Apple TV, and it's about something terrible, but it encapsulates like the energy behind a production studio. And it's chaotic and it's a lot, but like something about that, I really love it. Like waking up really early and having a million tasks to complete and then seeing the results happen in front of you. And I think that would be a really interesting way to mix the two, some sort of like production journalism, something like that. Because I think that also encapsulates some of the other things that I am like naturally drawn to, just kind of like project management, planning, stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm smiling because literally everything you said I can relate to. Even with journalism, so you spoke that into existence, I'll speak it into existence. I want to minor in journalism. It's hard because I want to double major as well.
Yep.
but there is a summer minor for journalism, and it's only 6 weeks. I was looking at it like 2 weeks ago, and I'm 100% going to do it next summer because, I mean, we have to come up for captain's training, and that's literally the exact same time.
Yeah,
so
worth it.
Journalism is something I love, I love watching people do it. Now I want to practice it. And law school is something that popped up into my head this semester. Like right after college maybe, or we'll see. But literally those two things as well. Speaking about shows, have you ever watched a show called The Newsroom?
No, but I've heard about it, and it's been recommended to me a lot.
You should definitely watch it. It's very short, but I think it's perfect timing because like the ending is pretty nice instead of extending it to more and more. I've watched other shows and they continue to extend it and it just isn't as good. Right. And here they like cut it out well, but it shows you how like the news media, especially like on TV, has just changed so much from facts to opinions and how that transition happened. But you should definitely watch it. I won't spoil it.
Okay.
But no, that is very cool. I mean, I had no clue about that at all. Going a bit more into the Go Bears, Go Vote. So take me through that. You learned about it your freshman year. Was that a thing your freshman year?
She didn't have a name for it, I don't think. Her name was Maddie Roberts, and she, like I said earlier, she basically came up with the idea. Her goal was to get all of the lacrosse athletes registered to vote. She came to, we had a meeting, and she had a presentation, why you should vote, why voting is cool, how to vote. She brought like envelopes and stamps. Like, she gave us no reason to not walk out of that room registered to vote. And I went through the process myself. I mailed my application for an absentee ballot. It was around the midterm elections in 2018. And that really stuck with me. She ended up graduating. Like I said, it was kind of like a one-woman show, so she wasn't able to achieve everything that she set out to, but she had the idea in mind. And then fast forward a few years, when the 2020 presidential election was coming up, I had talked about it with a few teammates who were also poli-sci majors throughout, leading up to 2020 about restarting this voting campaign and kind of picking it up where she left off and making it bigger, more widespread, trying to get support from the athletic department, from coaches, and reach every team if we could.
Yeah.
So I think in the summer of 2020, yeah, I called my coach. I had a check-in meeting with my coach, and I had told her, like, again, I spoke it into existence so someone else could hold me accountable if she wanted to check in on it, and I totally forgot. I told her we were going to do this, and I was like, we are going to dedicate, I know we don't have practice in the fall coming up because of COVID. We have all online school. Half of us won't even be in Berkeley, but we're going to make it happen. Just to let you know, I might need your help trying to engage with other coaches and like spreading the word. And she was super supportive, super helpful. And from there, we met in August, I think, the four of us, and kind of started planning and trying to modify our original plans of presenting in person with everyone to online presentations because of COVID, and trying to reach as many coaches as possible to get us on their calendar and start presenting from there. And then from September on, it was just go, presentation, reaching out to coaches, trying to get information out there, and then come November, it was all in the hands of the student athletes to go out and vote.
That's awesome. That's awesome that it happened, and that's interesting how you have like someone else hold you accountable for things. I mean, it's a good strategy. Before, again, diving into more details, I've noticed that the lacrosse team as a whole is very active. I mean, you mentioned the senior when you were a freshman, Maddie, and your coaches helping you out. I got to know a bit of your team as well. I mean, not really because it was virtual, but I helped out with the Bears United video, which was played at one of your halftime shows.
Yeah.
And that's how I like got to know your coaches, some of your teammates. Why is that, do you think? Well,
we actually dedicate our coach, Coach Eubanks, is a really one of her like main pillars, if you will, is community service. So we have meetings regularly, and that's including like film, going over and scout for preparing for the next game, whatnot. And one of those meetings that we have, I want to say once a month, is about our community outreach. And we have about 5 or 6 groups within our team dedicated to different groups in our community. We have a Headstrong Foundation, which is more of a lacrosse oriented. I think it is only lacrosse across teams across the country, where they raise money for it's a cancer research and cancer fundraising, something like that. I'm not doing a good job explaining it, but she dedicates X amount of time every month to require that we are all engaged, and half of the groups, like you said, are made by us. So we have a Go Bears Go Vote group, we have a Bears United group, Kelly is the president of SAC. We have all of those different outreach groups that half of them are started by us, so it's pretty cool that she builds in time for us to do it. And it also holds us accountable to following through and like building on it and making sure that something like Go Bears Go Vote is not just something that exists in 2020.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I know about Kelly and her involvement. Kelly is upstairs, so shout out Kelly. Same as like Brooke. You guys did the cookies the other day for the breast cancer research.
Yeah.
Brooke is also upstairs. Shout out Brooke. But that's awesome. I didn't know that about your coach, but from the few conversations that we've had over Zoom, I could tell. And is that something you guys know about, like during the recruitment process, or you just find out when you get here?
I think it's something that kind of came into fruition over the past 4 years, I want to say. Because I think with Maddie Roberts 4 years ago, that was definitely an individual effort, but it didn't necessarily transcend throughout the whole team. So I think she observed that we were, what we were doing off the field and outside of the classroom, and she started to work that into like our team culture, which is really cool.
And besides that, like we were just talking about this before recording, that like, for example, you guys have your little thing later today of Friendsgiving, but I was telling you, you guys seem very united. Do you think that community service has anything to do with it?
I think it definitely, we motivate each other a lot to be involved, and it's not necessarily, our community service is not necessarily just like a checkbox on our Cal Lacrosse resume. It's something that we all care passionately about, and we have the liberty to choose which groups and which foundations and which community outreach groups we want to be part of. So it comes ultimately from us, which our team chemistry and our like unity on that front helps a lot for us to be successful and engage outside of our team more than I think if we didn't necessarily have that strong of a team chemistry. So I think it is another self-reinforcing cycle that continues to produce good things.
That's so awesome. That is very cool to hear about. I think a lot of teams lack that, and that is something that is very admirable. I think I also see that in a team like women's basketball here at Cal. I mean, both Kai and Sierra, shout out to them, they started the Racial Justice Council, and I work with them on that and things like that, but their entire team, their coach, Charmin, is committed to it. And I don't think that happens mostly with other teams, but specifically with men's teams as well. It's very interesting. Like, what I've noticed is that women's teams are involved more in that. I'm not sure why, but like, since I help out with the Racial Justice Council, for example, we had they had a 5K event. We had a game that day, so I didn't go. But I got a text back from them. I think it was from Bryn, and she was like, yeah, field hockey was there. Women's basketball was there. I'm not sure if your team went to that.
Our whole team went, yeah.
All right, your whole team went to that, and I think men's basketball was there. And that's because of women's basketball. And that was it. It's like, I don't know. It's pretty weird to me. I don't like that that's the case, but it's just something I've realized. It's an observation, but I think that we have a lot of learning to do, specifically from your coaches, but as well as from the players that are like self-initiating all these different things, because not only is it having a positive impact on the community, but it's also having a positive impact on the team, which I think is awesome. So that all happened. Did you guys have a goal with Go Bears Go Vote?
Our goal was to ensure that every eligible student athlete at Cal was registered and prepared to vote. Obviously, we couldn't, have any way of checking to see, but the numbers that we collected we had pre-surveys and post-surveys, and we were able to see how many student athletes. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we had made a dent, essentially. And it was a really interesting time where there were majority of the student athletes had not yet participated in an election. They were of age, but there was no chance for them, or maybe they just, the smaller elections often go unnoticed. And I think this was a really critical time for us to be doing this project. So we kind of were just like, let's go big. Let's try to make the biggest impact we can. And it was really successful from that end.
Yeah, no, that was awesome, and it was my first election as well, mostly because of my age. But yeah, I remember that being a big thing, and I have one of the T-shirts as well, and that was very cool. What happened after that? What happened? Like, Go Bears Go Vote, the election happens. What's next? Is there anything?
Yes, so we've already started working with Jesse from the Cameron Institute, trying to move forward and plan for next year, as myself and Nikki is the other remaining Go Bears Go Vote co-leaders, and we're both graduating and leaving, and like you said, we don't want it to just disappear, because people graduate and new people come in, and that's another opportunity to either remind people, help people get registered. So we're working with her to start planning for next year, making it bigger, getting athletes from other teams to come and support, to be part of this leadership board, whatever that may be. Taking our notes from last year, because it was kind of like, it was organized, but for us to have an even bigger impact, it could be implemented in a very strategic structure. So we're kind of building that out, this plan, starting in December, and we're gonna go from there. And then at some point, I will just be handing off, the leadership of that to another younger student athlete who is just as passionate about it as we are.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it does have a huge impact to pass it on or pay it forward, if you will, to the next class and the next and the next, and just having that continuous impact. We met because, I saw you in a few of the videos that I made, which, so I did 2 last semester. One was for the Stop the Asian and Pacific Islander Hate, which you were in, and then the Bears United. Bears United is the gay straight alliance here at Cal, mostly for student athletes, and also, that's the lacrosse video, so... Yeah. So I saw you through that, but I also met you through the leadership showcase.
Yes.
Which is what both of the Camerons that were there with us have been here on the show as well. So it was that event that we were at back in May. We gave speeches, and your speech was focused on this campaign and that movement that you had. And I was writing down the quote from that in my notes, and apologies for that delay, but I really wanted to get this down. You said that day that we can sink, we can float, or we can swim. What did you mean by that, and is that still applicable today?
Yeah, definitely. I think that could be applicable to any aspect of your life. And I think that's how I would describe maybe my first couple of years at Berkeley, of not quite sinking, but floating. And I mean that in the sense of academically not really knowing what I was going to study, but just kind of trying to bang out some requirements and just get by. Floating is essentially, to me, just getting by in any circumstance, lacrosse-wise, just trying to stay afloat in a very chaotic student-athlete life. And it wasn't until my junior year, I think last year was a really pivotal year for me, where I felt myself really starting to swim. I was way more passionate about the classes I was taking and the essays I was writing. I found myself getting involved outside of lacrosse and outside of school, which was something that I've always wanted to do. I just didn't know how, and I didn't know where I fit in. And I think swimming also has to do with kind of making those opportunities for yourself. I think as a floater, we sometimes just wait for opportunities to come to us and then maybe take them on or maybe don't. But I think being a swimmer would be all about just like taking every opportunity that's given to you, but also creating it for yourself if it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and that's the latter part of your quote from that showcase. Yeah, and I was like gonna say like that's literally why I invited you to this podcast, right? It's many people do it unconsciously. Like obviously they are leaving their dent, but it's like not something that they label as leaving my dent, you know? But in this case, the rest of the quote says the difference between floating and swimming is the difference between deciding to get better and deciding to just get by. There is a huge difference between taking opportunities and making opportunities. Those who make opportunities for themselves are the people who are going to change the world. At the end of the day, nobody is going to invite you to change the world. You have to decide to do it for yourself and those around you. And to me, that is denting. Like what denting is all about. I applaud you for that. That is awesome. It is very admirable. And this all even led you to receiving one of the 3 community service awards that are handed out here at Cal. But the best part is that you didn't do it for that. You didn't do it for the recognition, or maybe you did, but I don't think so. But it's like that dent or that passing on or that swimming, like you called it, it's awesome. And the way you said it as well, nobody's going to invite you to change the world. It's the people who are going out and doing it for themselves, creating those opportunities. Did you realize that before you did that, or did the experience teach you that later?
I think the entire experience, in that entire year, it was really cool to be able to speak in May at the same time that I was kind of living through those lessons. So it was a really cool moment that will probably never happen to me ever, to have the chance to like talk to people or about my life after a whole year of a lot of change for everyone, obviously. But I think I took that major step from floating to swimming, especially here at Berkeley, and I think those lived experiences are kind of what taught me that. And having the opportunity to sit down and reflect on the year and then share it is kind of how that all came to mind, and how all of those lessons were kind of right there in front of me, because I'd just gone through a whole year of starting to make a dent, or starting to realize that the power's in my hands to do so if I choose. So it was all on me.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it is the lived experiences. There's a reflection of a guy named Plutarch, and I forgot it memorized, but it says something like it's not about the words that we learn from others, but the words that are created from our experiences. And that's what you're talking about, and it's so true, because for example, I like to read a lot, and I will learn from others through reading, but at the end of the day, you'll learn the most from what you experience. And I feel like that's what you're talking about, and it's so special, and I'm glad that you get to reflect it. And it's crazy because this happened over a year ago now. Today's the 19th, and that was November 4th, I believe, last year with the elections. And it's awesome. It's awesome that it had such a great impact, and we're going to need it again for next year's midterms. Yes. Moving on from that, you've talked about SNL, you've talked about satire, Go Bears, Go Vote. What is your take on all of this? Because although it may lean one way, it seems bipartisan. Would you ever make a campaign or something like that is partisan?
I think it depends.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what we realized with the opportunity with Go Bears, Go Vote is that we, especially in such a critical election, it was not our place at that point to even suggest that voters should vote one way or another. We just wanted people to vote. So we were working from like the ground up, like starting at zero, assuming nobody is registered to vote, no one knows how to register to vote. And that was kind of our goal with that. I mean, I think it all also depends on like where we are. Like recognizing like, yes, I had, you know, the agency and the position as a student athlete at Cal, who had this knowledge of how to register others and how, and we had the ability to lead from that perspective. Taking all those things into consideration, like going in a very nonpartisan direction was the way to yield the best results.
100% for that past election, and especially because of the way it was just being played out. I don't think it's the right approach in that case, especially coming from UC Berkeley and all the stereotypes and things. Maybe I didn't phrase this right, but what I meant was like an example would be Go Bears, get vaxxed. Like things like that, where it shouldn't be bipartisan. I mean, it shouldn't be partisan, and it's not really a political thing.
Right.
But people make it political, and like at UC Berkeley, you have to be vaccinated to go to school. I think it's like, I don't know the exact number. I know it's above 80% now of people here that are vaccinated. I'm not sure what the athletic department number is, but it's little things like that, I mean, Go Bears, get vaxxed, or any other social issues. Like, would you see yourself doing that, or would you just stay away from it?
That's really interesting. I think kind of why I was drawn to rebooting Go Bears, Go Vote is because I had the knowledge to do so. I had the knowledge plus 3 friends, and together we had the skill set to make it happen. I don't know if I would take any other direction, or, for example, like the Go Bears, Go Bags, because I don't think I am equipped to do such thing. Like, I don't think I have the good grounding of knowledge, and I don't know. That it would be a really interesting campaign, obviously an important one, but you're right, the undertone of it not being a political issue, but obviously having political implications, as we've seen. It's a good thought. I don't know that I would be the person to do that.
Okay.
But I think on a more individual, like, relationship level, I think those are probably more conversations I'd be engaged in, not necessarily on like the grand scheme. Changing like widespread thought or an opinion is not something I think, if I'm not prepared to or don't have the knowledge myself to do it, I'm not equipped to handle that.
Interesting. So one of the reflections I've recently had is basically philosophy is inwards, not outwards. Religion is inwards, not outwards. How is politics, and what role should that play? Like you're mentioning right now, for example, philosophy and religion. I'm Catholic. That means I'm Catholic. It doesn't mean I'm going to tell you to be Catholic. Mm-hmm. How do you think that plays a role in politics? Because the difference I see between those two, let's call it philosophy or religion, and politics is that my religion isn't really necessarily going to affect you, but the way I vote is.
Right.
So what role should that play, and how equipped do we need to be to talk? Obviously, it's our right to talk. We can say whatever we want.
Right.
But how equipped should we be before we start talking, and how often should we do that?
Yeah, you make a good point. Like, obviously, there are political implications to everything. And, like, it's not something that can really go ignored. I think it's really important for everyone to be somewhat in the know. And because of that, I think as politics, as a philosophy, if you will, is it must be part of the conversation, and I think it's not at all. And I think maybe there is some sort of turning point in younger the younger generations of having those critical conversations surrounding politics, because it is messy, like you said. There are topics that are not meant to be political but inherently are.
Yeah.
So I think because of that reason it can't go ignored, because for some instances it affects people's lives, for better or for worse. So I think for that, and I think I hear a lot from friends or people our age who often say, like, oh, they don't have the knowledge, they don't know who they're going to vote for because they don't have the research, which is kind of the same excuse that people say to, like, vaccination, like, oh, I don't know enough yet, I need to do my research. But I think that statement is a little flawed because people aren't necessarily doing their research.
Yeah.
So, things with, like, the vaccines and, like, COVID, that eventually will come and it will go at some point, maybe. But politics, I think, is here forever.
Forever, yeah. I think, COVID will come and go, not COVID itself, but topics like it. But it's always going to be something else, just with a different name. Politics will be here forever. Do you think it's our responsibility as people that are passionate about this to make sure that other people are informed about this? And how should we do it? Because you made people informed about voting through Go Bears, Go Vote. Should we take a larger responsibility in having people informed on at least the most important things year-round?
I think as people who are interested and passionate about it, and as people who want to make a difference, I think it's just where you start is making a difference within reach, within your community. And I think that's what we did with Go Bears, Go Vote. We didn't have the mindset of, okay, let's get every single person we know registered to vote. Let's get every single person at Berkeley registered to vote. And not that it was because it was unrealistic, but because we saw an opportunity to make a really big impact within our Cal Athletics community. And I think starting small, and if everyone kind of did their part to one extent or another about, like, whatever you're passionate about, starting small and within reach is not that it's good enough, but it's a really great start.
Yeah. It's the same as setting any sort of goal, right? Start small and add those wins, and then you keep increasing and increasing. And I think it has to do with paying it forward. Have you watched that movie, Pay It Forward?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so Pay It Forward, it's basically a movie about a young kid, and in the classroom they have to do some community service event, and this kid just decides to pay it forward. So he helps out 3 people, and those 3 people help out 3 people, and it continues to add up, and it's an exponential growth, which is obviously the benefit of starting small. For example, your teammate Maddie Roberts, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Maddie started out with the lacrosse team. She inspired you, and you inspired the whole athletic department. You're inspiring other people, and maybe it's going to be the entire UC Berkeley community. Mm-hmm. After that, maybe it's all of Berkeley. It just keeps adding up, and I think that's the beauty of it for sure. But I think that you're right. We should start small and just, like, take it on that way, because if not, we're taking on too much responsibility that we can't control at one point, and that I feel it's overwhelming. And on another note, just with that responsibility, I just want to get to know your take on this. Since we aren't as informed on certain topics, and we are informed on other topics that other people aren't informed on, what role should we take on this? For example, at Cal, there are doctors that are informed about the vaccine, and they decided to mandate it within UC Berkeley. I'm not talking the US or the California or anything. I'm talking about within UC Berkeley, or UC, not even that, Cal Athletics. Within Cal Athletics, there's people that know and are informed about the vaccine, and they mandated it. Is that the approach that should be taken in politics altogether? Listening to those that do know? Because otherwise it's like misinformed people just making decisions, and that's not going to drag us anywhere.
I think what's complicated about politics is that it's not black and white, and there's no right or wrong, and that's just like the nature of our two-party system, is that there will always be conflict and disagreements, and because of that, I mean, I think kind of what I said earlier, it's about just having the conversation. And I mean, in any case, it's really difficult to navigate misinformation and based on conversations, because you could be having a conversation with someone who is knowledgeable and still somehow be misinformed. So I think with the politics approach, it's important to be open-minded, and it's important to engage in conversations, especially when you don't know anything about any certain topic. And likewise, if you do know a lot about this certain topic, also being open-minded to other opinions and other sides. Because like it's just the nature of the two-party system it's not as black and white as science.
Yeah.
It's a different kind of science for sure.
Yeah, different kind of science, 100%. I was going to follow up by asking what if people don't want to be open-minded, but I feel like it does lead to that black and white because it just creates a polarized society, and it's literally what you're talking about. When we're not open-minded, that's what happens. And there's actually a great quote from the content creator / author that I follow the most. He says that in a polarized society, the greatest act of rebellion is having a dialogue, like having these conversations. And you're right. What can you say to someone that isn't sure about how to start these conversations? What advice could you give to them?
I mean, I think it's certainly daunting, and I think we all shy away from it, maybe with certain individuals. I mean, I think the best way to go about it is also to, when you're engaging with someone who might not be as open-minded as you, suggest that they should be, and take that approach to an open and honest and more raw conversation about genuinely getting each other's opinions, but also comparing them, and that difference is okay. Because I think a lot of the times when we engage with people who are not as open-minded as us, it causes us to be more closed-minded, because it just makes us more hesitant to listen to their opinion, because you know your opinion is not going to be heard.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, even with the people who might be more knowledgeable in the situation, acknowledging that at the very beginning, in the very forefront, it's important, I think, to have it's important to have that understanding from both sides in order to have kind of that like critical conversation and for it to be productive ultimately.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we're trying to get other people to be open-minded, we're unconsciously becoming close-minded as well, and it's such a dilemma, and it's crazy, but I feel like you're taking the democracy approach towards that, which is interesting. I mean, I was going to ask you, but you kind of answered it in a way, whether the best way to deal with things in this day is through democracy or not, because although I am pro-democracy, it is a blessing and a curse at times, because if you see where the country is today, it's so divided, again, thanks to misinformation. So at what point do we cut that out and allow someone to take control with information, with proper knowledge? So
yeah, I think I have that maybe I have this perspective because of the state that we are in, that it is so polarized, that how do we make it the slightest bit more unified?
Yeah.
And how do we exist in this polarized world while trying, I think it's the same thing, starting small and just like slowly trying to close the ties, because I think some aspects of politics, there will never ever be a middle ground.
No.
And I think that's just the nature of it. And maybe if we lived in a very different world, I'd have a different approach to it, but I think that's why I think of it like that. Yeah,
I agree. I think that it leads back to the answer that dialogue is the answer. Like the quote I just mentioned, I mean, in a polarized society, the greatest act of rebellion is dialogue. And I think that it's awesome because one, we're doing it right now, which is it's pretty cool. But two, I mean, helping others do it as well is what's going to solve this. And three, I like that that's the solution because I enjoy talking with other people. So that's fun. Closing out in a, I don't know, in a different shift to all of this, what role do you think student athletes play in today's society with social issues?
I think we have a really interesting, we're in a really interesting position because we have these little communities at our schools, within our departments, within our teams. And we're lucky that we have those groups laid out for us. Like if you were to ask me how do I get engaged at another school, I'd say start small, smart with your team. Have conversations with just your team. And then from there, you will see how much impact you as a team can have on the entire department and how much the entire department can have on the entire school. So I think we're in a really important position where we are kind of, I think we're able to make a much bigger difference than what some student athletes than what we're taking advantage of. And I think student athletes, although so busy all the time, should really take advantage of that and leverage their position, because there are people that look up to student athletes, whether they're younger siblings, fans, onlookers, anyone. The lights are normally shined on us, so it's kind of what we do with it. And I think a lot of student athletes at this school have taken that step, which is really exciting to see and be a part of and watch.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And I don't know, well, for those that don't know, we're in a same class, like we share a class this semester, and that's how I've also gotten to know you a bit more. One of the things I said actually this week in class, we were talking about the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, and I just mentioned that I feel like athletes or pro athletes have a responsibility of using their platform for the better, because I mean, a lot of people look up to Aaron Rodgers. He graduated from Cal as well, so it's an interesting take from that end. But a lot of kids look up to him, and right now the vaccine just got authorized for kids, so that even creates more of a dilemma. And I do think that pro athletes with their platform have a responsibility. I don't think it's much of a choice. It's an actual responsibility, in my opinion. With that being said, I think that student athletes also have a responsibility. Like you said, a lot of people look up to us whether we know it or not. No, we don't have Aaron Rodgers' platform, right? We're not Alex Morgan. We're not people like them that have graduated from the school and have a huge platform. But people still look up to us. We still do have some sort of platform, and I think that we got to use it for the better in a sense. Like, for example, I know that my Instagram account is not huge. I know that there are less than 2,000 people who could see what I post. But I still post it because people don't realize, like, that's 2,000 people. That's, like, still a good amount of people. And for me, it's like, if you can have an impact on 5 people that view a post or a caption or a video, that's still an impact, you know? And I think that, I don't know, student athletes, in a way, are the leaders of tomorrow. They could be the leaders of today, but I'm talking like the world leaders of tomorrow, because we have that platform as athletes, but as well as that education as students. So I don't know, just an interesting combination for me.
Yeah, I think it's the difference between pro athletes having this obligation versus student athletes have the opportunity, and like it's the ones who you know have the agency to leverage that and take that opportunity. That's the most, I feel like that's so critical in making a difference in whatever way.
Goes back to your quote from everything, right? Like taking an opportunity or making one. Lastly, just to close off, I'm pretty much done with my notes, but something came up earlier when you mentioned SNL and satire. With comedy, Recently, well, I've always been really into political comedy. Even since before I got into current events, I was really into it, and it made me laugh until I just didn't know what they were talking about, which is why I got into it. But recently, I've been watching a lot, whether it be SNL or Last Week Tonight or Jimmy Fallon or people like that, right? But also specials on Netflix or YouTube or whatever. With comedy, especially stand-up, where do we draw the line with the PC culture in today's world?
It's tough. I don't necessarily know, because that line, I feel like, is often crossed. I don't know where it is, but the line is often crossed. But I think that's part of the nature of the satire, is that we're able to make light of serious topics. Whether that's harmful or not, I don't know. And probably something that would be really cool to observe and analyze, just because there are definitely, I'm sure, there are definitely harms to it on viewers or on, the greater message that they're sending out. But I think ultimately with the nature of the political, satire, is to spread it's to inform to some extent. And I think there is always going to be some sort of undertone of, whatever side they're making light of, or whatever situation they're making light of. There is some sort of political undertone that takes a side in the situation. But I think it's also really interesting to think about the audience members, who is watching those shows and who is consuming that media. Because if they're anything like you and I, we also have our own personal takes on things, and we also are willing to open up the computer and do our own research based on the topic. So I think that's also something to consider. Interesting.
So I hadn't taken the same approach like you just did with that they're spreading information. Obviously with SNL, Last Week Tonight, Jimmy Fallon, people like that, it makes sense. But like someone I have in mind right now was the recent special with Dave Chapelle. I don't know if you heard about the situation that happened with that.
No, I haven't.
So he released a special called, I think it's called The Closer, and it was going to be the last one for a while. And he decided to just, his whole stand-up was about how the LGBTQ plus community can also be racist, and talking about how him belonging to the black community was very affected by many people that did belong to the LGBTQ plus community, but many people took it as an attack specifically on transgender people, and that's what created the whole dilemma and mess, and it involved a bit of the cancel culture that we have today. I do think that Dave Chapelle has a platform. I do think he is informing people, and like you just said, he does have that obligation, because a lot of people that are watching or listening aren't going to open up a computer the way you and I do. That's actually the majority of people, and that's why we're screwed. But at the same time, I don't feel like, personally, I'm against cancel culture, because if we cancel other people, there's no dialogue.
Right.
And that's what we're saying is the solution to solve our world's problems. I believe that dialogue and education are the solution to all of the world's problems. And if we apply cancel culture, it messes it up. So we can't cancel Dave, but he's also I understand his take, in all honesty. If you, instead of looking at reviews and just watching the thing, all right, you can kind of understand what he's trying to say, but it's just not the right way to say it, and
right.
it's
the joke didn't land. It wasn't.
He said some really messed up things that I'm not gonna say on my show, but yeah, it's just drawing that line, and I feel like what you said stood out to me.
It's got to be a really difficult thing to navigate as a comedian who regularly, maybe not Dave Chapelle, but other comedians on the Weekend Update who regularly engage in that kind of content. There needs to be, especially now with cancel culture, 5 extra steps taken to make sure that what is being said does not cross this line, because I think the lines vary depending on what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially today.
Well, even on Weekend Update, they do push the line, because if you don't push it, it's not going to be funny.
Right.
That's just the reality of it. Like, comedy is a time where people, like, the purpose of comedy is to make fun of someone else. If you're that someone else, you're going to get offended. And in today's world, cancel culture. Before, it was like, all right, either I'll take it or I'll get mad. And if you get mad, just don't go, right? But yeah, I think that the difference now is that we have a platform, and you and I can sit down and speak on a mic and record with cameras and post this on social media, and it does have an impact, especially from arguably the greatest comedian of all time, you know? So, I don't know. It's just interesting to me. I don't feel like we should cancel, but
right.
yeah, like there should be a line drawn, and I don't think it should limit. It should just be being smart about what you're saying, you know? So, I don't know. I just wanted to put that out there. Anything else? Anything I missed?
No, I don't think so.
Well, one more question.
Sure.
One more question. I was looking through, again, the notes. I'm not sure how much of the readings you've done in the class we're in, and I'm not going to put you on the spot. Personally, I'm really behind on the readings. It's 3 books.
So am I.
Yeah, well, it's 3 books that we should have read. I'm finishing the first one right now. Basically, it's not that I'm not responsible. It's just that the class isn't focused on the books.
Right.
But I'm finishing Notes from the Cracked Ceiling right now, which is on female candidates in the United States, specifically the presidency, and what it will take for a woman to become president. This was written back in, I believe, 2010-ish. It was right after 2008 with Clinton, Hillary Clinton. And I just wanted to get your take on it. What will it take, like, from a female's point of view in politics, and from the same perspective as a student athlete? What do you think it will take for a female to become a president in the United States?
I mean, it will happen.
Yeah.
And it will happen soon. I think the narrative shouldn't necessarily be focused on the women as leaders, because they're sure as hell equipped. It's the voters.
Yeah.
It's the people who are putting them in office. Are they there yet? And I think soon. It's promising. And it's long overdue, but I think we just need that pivotal moment to happen for it to ignite a change in American politics with our leaders, and I think hopefully that will be soon. But I think the focus is on who, not necessarily who the leader is, but who, because if they're getting to the point where they're top candidate who people are considering, but if it comes down to gender, that's on the people voting. Yeah. And that's on the mindsets of others, and not necessarily the individual who's taken herself that far. Yeah. I mean, for context for other people, the book is called Notes from the Cracked Ceiling because in her, when Hillary Clinton conceded to Obama back in 2008, she just said, at least there's 30 million cracks in the ceiling, meaning everybody that voted for her, and like how that ceiling is almost about to shatter. Obviously, this was written in 2010. Currently, we do have a vice president who is a female, and she's gone past many barriers, which is good. But the book does focus on the voters and the double standards, and it does dive deep into that. It also talks about how some candidates have to be aware of these things. For example, Sarah Palin, who was the vice presidential candidate in 2012, the book criticizes her for not being as prepared as maybe she should have been, which is unfair because of the double standards. But what's your take? Should should females as candidates adjust to the double standards, or should they speak out against them and not have them? Like not have them, right, but not take them is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these double standards are just so long ingrained in all things, in society. And unfortunately, rejecting them may not be the most... I mean, I think obviously you have to reject them to some degree as a female candidate who is faced with these impossible standards that male candidates don't, have to face. But I think I don't know if there's more of a strategic way to reject them while also acknowledging its existence and working around it and navigating it. Because I think that's something as women we have to do outside of politics too. Yeah. So I think, that getting to that position of power where enough American voters are voting in majority for you, it's hard to ignore, I think, and it because of its existence, these double standards, it must be acknowledged, and I think acknowledging it means figuring out how to navigate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in another example later on in the book, I'm about to finish it, so I'm reading it, but there is Nancy Pelosi's case and how, well, we know that many of the female candidates have also, like, one of the biggest double standards is parenthood, in the sense that, I mean, many males have, most males, politicians, have children, but if there's a mother, it obviously changes the whole conversation, and how Nancy Pelosi actually embraced that as a mother, as a grandmother, and said, like, this is the role I'm playing in Congress as well, and saying, like, that's the best training I can have to be a politician. And I mean, obviously I'm not a female, but from my point of view, I feel like once female candidates fully understand, presidential candidates, because in Congress we already saw it happen, but once they fully understand that breaking past that barrier is going to be having to adjust to that and then making the difference once you're there,
right?
That's what it's going to take. That's what I think. The issue is they haven't gotten there yet, and until you get there you can't change it, and that's just the barrier that exists, and waiting for that ceiling to shatter. There's a quote actually within the very first minutes of the show I told you about, The Newsroom. Really recommend that you watch it, but it's basically the anchor for the show, Will McAvoy, and two others in a panel. They're just panelists at a college, and the quote is, the first step to solving any problem is recognizing that there is one. And I feel like that's what you're saying with the awareness and knowledge that's going on. And I'm not sure, I'm not one to say, because I'm not female, if whether they should adapt to it or go against it. I just feel like the most strategic thing to do is adjust and go from there.
Right. I mean, I think one of the strategies the authors in that book talk about is using what is pitted against you in these double standards as strengths, as your strengths, playing on them. And I think that's also just like acknowledging, for instance, motherhood, acknowledging that you are a mother and owning it and using that to your strength, the way Nancy Pelosi did.
Yeah.
There will always be backlash no matter what. And I think that's just the most meaningful way to go about it, because it's also not rejecting these things that are part of you.
Yeah.
You are a mother, so you don't want to, you can't reject the existence of that double standard. You have to rather like reconfigure the narrative around it.
Yeah, 100%. I'm not sure if you've ever watched the movie 8 Mile.
Mm-mm.
All right, so it's about Eminem, like the rapper Eminem, and just his story. And at the end, there's a rap battle, and there's 3 battles within it just to win the whole thing. And at the last one, it's like it's him against the people that bully him, pretty much. And the way that he just freestyles about it is owning up to everything that he is, and he says, he basically describes himself. And then he says, all right, like, that's me. What are you going to say about me now? Mm-hmm. And it's hanging that lantern the way we say in class, that I feel is what it takes. And Nancy Pelosi got there. She has expressed many times that she doesn't want to be a presidential candidate, but hopefully someone will we'll make it happen soon. I mean, obviously, we do have a vice president now. Maybe she's the one that can take that step in. If not, hopefully soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's pretty much it. Anything I missed or anything else?
No, I think we're all good.
Well, perfect. This was honestly one of the best talks I've had here by far. I enjoyed how we, instead of like diving deep into stories that are already made, it was just like exploring certain topics, and I really, really enjoyed this. I'm hoping we can do it again before you graduate next May. But yeah, this is very enjoyable. To everybody that watched, thank you very much. Whether you watched on YouTube, listened on Spotify, thank you so much. Please help me out by liking, subscribing, etc., and sharing it with anyone you think that would like it. The book that we mentioned is called Notes from a Cracked Ceiling. Other ones that I'd recommend from this class about polarization are Them and Why We're Polarized. Yeah, and they're two different perspectives. One is from the right, one is from the left, so don't tell us we're leaning one way, even though we go to Berkeley. But yeah, that's it for today. I'll see you all next time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Make sure to subscribe to my podcast and follow me on my personal social media accounts for more, all at Fer Andraez. All links are in the description. If this episode inspired you in any way, please help me out by sharing it with a friend to help them leave their dent in the universe as well. That's it for today. I'll see you all next time.